Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode titled Beyond Personalized Realities. And I would like to begin by speaking about the humanization of existence, and how the human civilization, even though we know that the earth is not the center of the universe, our attentions make the universe, make themselves the center of the universe. Just like how a person can imbue personal qualities to inanimate objects, just like how Michelangelo saw the angel in the stone and set it free, we can say the mind is the grand sculptor of meaning and the experience of reality where meaning arises from. Man is alone. When he wonders about how far the sight behind his eyes can be witnessed. I sometimes playfully think that imagine instead of apes evolving, it was lions. And how much more different would the philosophy uh, of those creatures be? You see, the kind of person you see yourself as, it is from that lens of vision where the world appears, I find. The curtain of karma is pulled once the actor is ready to perform. The term humanization, I like that term. Not only because it sounds similar to a humanized nation, but it's like the mind, I find, is the sculptor, and the sculptor's hand is not part of the sculpture. Therefore, whatever phenomena that is observed from the mind will eventually, I find after some point, the mind will be seen separate from what it is observing. The content of your mind is like not your mind. The liquid in the glass, like a cup of water, the water is not the cup. It's kind of like our minds are recycling sensory perception into abstract phenomena, into imagination. Kind of what I'm saying could be applied right now. The words that I say define the subjective, how the subjective realm solidifies. Life is very incredible. It is so multidimensional that sometimes it is because of this relationship, this multidimensional relationship of intelligence, that man cannot know. Life may appear as a journey because of our limitations, but if there is the potential presence of a limitless view, because guys, that was really what drew me to ancient wisdom traditions and to yoga, where the word means to join, union, and the person's going to be like, union of what? Isn't yoga just exercises in the mall, in your local mall? And the person will realize, no, it's the union of the thoughts of man with their source. You see, it's not a too much of a far-fetched idea, guys. People back in the day, they would reproduce, they would give life to children, and so when they thought about how the world came into existence, in some sense they thought it was born. And when they thought the world was born, they of course ascribed it personalities. For me, religion, yes, on some level, when you mix religion with the political systems of modern times, it's as if like taking your 90-year-old grandpa to an EDM concert. It doesn't work. Both sides will get upset. And so really, but the idea of religion is that I consider it as magnificent artwork, because it in the 6th century was the first time man personalized the unknown to himself. That means whether the religious ideology is valid or invalid, that's another matter. The fact that human beings looked at the sky and they felt there was something to talk to means that it was for the first time how the extension of the personhood went beyond the clouds. So sometimes I wonder, what is it behind those clouds when I look at the sky? And I realize it is the edge of the mind that perceives it. Kind of like when you see faces in the clouds. This is a playful thing many people do. They sometimes see faces in clouds. It's as if the cloud has nothing to do with the face you see. The cloud is just being the cloud. The elemental reality is just here, you know? However, how the elemental reality is evoked into value, how much the momentum and the direction of the attention become crucial for the human being. It's one of those things where I find after a person has stepped beyond the language threshold, doesn't matter age-wise, young or old, at some point this is going to sound hilarious, but all you could change it into any other direction. The mind is an atmosphere where the attention, where activity flowing through attention kind of keeps it alive. You see, the mind was, here's the issue. The mind is being seen as the person. It is not being seen as a tool. Because it is not being considered as a tool, it is not being utilized properly. And you cannot use a tool you cannot see. This is the challenge. This is one of those mystical Rubik's cubes. Where how does man fulfill an individual purpose in a vast collective field? It's like, what does the drop do in the ocean? Or what can that melting iceberg do in the ocean? Existence was just sight and space. We are conditioned into humanity. and we're not being conditioned into an efficient one. That means at least even if human beings have to tell themselves a story, the overall story of the species is not a good one. At most, it's a very mysterious and disoriented one. You know, the days we spend in unknown worlds just to see that the knowing was internal. I find that this is something cool I can share. So, me personally, I have kind of the way I speak about. Many of you have probably heard it who are tuning in. But here's the idea. I say if we need an explanation for reality, it has to be very simple. That means the child can understand, and in some sense, the most sophisticated human being can also understand, you know? And so I thought about it, and I kind of saw the missing piece. And so the idea is that we human beings in some sense have been considering an objective evolution, but we have not been considering a subjective evolution. You can say the subjective evolution happened just like the metamorphosis of a caterpillar. The same way, in some sense, the caterpillar went in the cocoon and became a butterfly. It was as if it was a creature of pure legs, and then it became a creature of pure wings. And so I find that what has really occurred to humanity is that for a very long time, we were walking in the legs of a caterpillar, you know? Not in the legs of a cat. I mean, we were walking in the shoes, in the many shoes of a caterpillar. And then a sort of I don't want to say, I don't want to give it a word. I don't, oh man. I'll say it like this: a sort of shift, a metamorphosis from an objective oriented being moved into a subjective oriented being. You know what happened? That means literally, if the moment of existence was a driver's seat, the subjective realm came into the driver's seat before it was the objective realm. It was pure objectivity. That means when a person truly, you can say, I find that a person, after some point in your memory, it becomes non-linear. When memory becomes non-linear, emotions evoke abstraction. So that means I've had moments where I've experienced an emotion, I knew it was not mine. I knew the emotion was just in the environment. I knew not just nothing was happening in the environment, but I just went into a room and a sudden rage came out of nowhere. As if like somebody stepping on gum. Two things have to be open in life in order for there to be any type of success. The first one is an open, the person needs to have open eyes. The second thing is the person needs to have an open mind. Now, it's very easy to open your eyes, but how do you open the mind? As the metamorphosis from a purely objective oriented creature, pretty much the movement of an objective oriented creature, the movement was the language of the inanimate. So it's like stuff started moving, you know? Then this stuff became aware it's moving. Then it no longer called itself stuff. And as language evolved into a very interesting position, now the world is it's kept in it, you know. For example, you know how in Matrix the guy was like on the computer screen seeing those like symbols, green symbols kind of vertically coming down, you know. I wondered for a second, how can this guy know? And I realized it's as if like the program is dictating what is authorized and what is allowed, you know. So imagine if you kind of knew the program of a computer, you would know what to expect, you know. So it was a sort of language over the whole moment of the being in the matrix, you know. The issue is that language cannot evolve. I mean, I've thought about us creating like AI in a way where, for example, we create programs that endlessly generate words and endlessly generate meanings that are relevant to those words. You know, like it is possible, but I find the utility of the voice. It's like, here's the thing: we're natural beings. We are creating an unnatural environment. We are desiring the unnatural environment. And as we desire it, we eventually notice a reduction of signal, as if you went into a parking lot and the phone signal is gone. That phone signal that is gone, that really is nature. That is the heartbeat of nature. And it moves beyond the rooms that man creates for himself, his personalized realities, right? That means any time, like I entertain thought. I do not. You cannot own language. You know, just like a person saying, "I'm going to own air." It's like you cannot own air. Do you know? Because even if you did, nature balances itself. The mind is a space where intelligence moves in. The intelligence for the human being now, it navigates through three states, you can say: the conscious waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. In deep sleep, there is no ego, no past, no future. It is simply the acceptance of nature of its own absence. In dream states, we find that there is a mind even giving the conscious moment a body. You know, I have moved in the bodies I've had in my dreams. Like literally, I had a dream where I was running really like at a speed that I can't normally run that fast. I kind of find the sub instrument, you know, or they can put down the instrument, close their eyes, and envision themselves holding the instrument in many ways behind their eyes, right? So that's kind of like the another arm of the free will. I say that the body has control over one dimension, the mind has control over two. That means, so the body has control over one dimension. What does that mean? That means the laws of nature must be respected, or in some sense, avoiding nature means you have not looked at your world. So, in regards to the objective realm, you have to look at nature. You have to learn from nature first. But in regards to your inner realms, your subjective realms, the whole how thought is being projected and how neurons are busy keeping the cinema going. Like I found something incredible that the yogis would say, that when a person, I think it's in the Upanishads as well, they say that when a person can see himself like another, he is in some sense in a liberated state. You know what that means? That means the same way you see, for example, an objective phenomena, you also begin observing your subjective phenomena. This awareness to the subjective realm has been, it was awakened, like it was alive in ancient times, man. Like in Greek, Greek philosophers, and Aristotle says it is the sign of an educated idea, educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. So imagine back in the day in the school of Athens, these freestyle philosophical debates happening. And it was as if there were audience members listening to what words, what sequencing of conception, what paintings were drawn in the dialogues, you know? Beyond personalized reality, there comes a requirement to have the courage to trust the unknown. When you trust the unknown, the intelligence, the free will is in some sense being fully confronted. Once your free will is fully confronted by life's movements, in some sense life awakens your free will, then in some sense there comes a responsibility for the inner realms. Most people are responsible for their objective realms. They may be responsible for certain ranges of their subjective realm, but to truly become responsible for how the experience of existence is being a thought. Like, this is a fascinating thing, guys. We are creatures on the surface of a planet where behind our eyes there's stuff occurring. There's phenomenology occurring where the person knows, but unless they communicate, it is not there. So, in some sense, life is, we cannot even consider the word miracle because then everything would be a miracle. Language is being reintroduced multidimensionally, just like how there's a dictionary with different meanings for one term. An idea can be accessed through various experiences, various states of mind. You see, we have not mapped this far in our subjective realm and in our educational systems, that to try to, in some sense, try to see that the conscious moment, the conscious waking state is the airport. We must become creatures that study what is behind their eyes as significantly as what is in front of their eyes. The era of advanced communication has come. That means the human being must consider themselves as an advanced communicator, but not as an advanced communicator of some language, as an advanced communicator of the moment, as if the whole universal sector's communication is humanity. In order for us to be natural beings, that means that we have to forget the separation of antiquity. We have to forget, in some sense, that we're just purely human. We have to become natural. That means the truths of nature surpass human conception. And to truly comprehend them means that you have to be willing to be a conscious moment that sees something more than the familiar. And I don't know how many people in the world there are that are willing to see more than the world that is in front of their eyes. And even if they're willing, with what intention? Is it in a world where everything's being marketed, honest voices may be seen hollow. But the war of language has not ended. Language is If we don't evolve beyond language, it will be a tragedy for future generations. If we evolve beyond our language, beyond our conscious experience of the subjective realm, then it's as if life becomes having a different meaning. Imagine philosophers from all around the world sitting in one room, and for the first time there comes the most profound argument ever of, in some sense, what are we? As if every nation is asked and the answer must come quick, you know? In that philosophical arena, the exploration of consciousness will eventually relate to some sort of relationship with the unknown. The moment the unknown is seen, that is when the true chaos of the subjective realm occurs. It is the emptiness of an idea. It's kind of like, imagine, like you see this in movies, where the person is in love with someone and they, in some sense, reveal their love only to see that the other is in a different room, in a different universe, you know? This is why sometimes when you love the world too hard, you're actually loving only your world. If the attitude becomes that rather than we chase the butterfly, we sit still among the flowers in the garden and the butterfly lands on the forehead of the person, if we have that idea, that means rather than the person trying to become something, they pay attention to what they are and adjust accordingly in accordance to moment. That means if I wanted to keep, like, on some level, certain memories must come and go. Certain memories can memories consciously can be accessed anytime. They're like literally doors you can go to and open. Um, However, how much it is necessary to have a landscape, a sort of shape to the inner realm. The inner realm leads to shape, but the full realization of the inner, remember, guys, it goes beyond the language threshold. It becomes non conceptual. The humanization of existence has even gone as far as the inner realm. Is it that we are extracting and sculpting simultaneously a value? For example, when I speak, of course, obviously, it's like I see behind my eyes a sort of like a landscape, a vastness. Now, this vast landscape that I see behind my eyes, obviously, I cannot say, I cannot vocalize all of it. Do you know? I noticed that early on. I'm seeing more than that I can say. So then I wondered, in some sense, how to communicate a whole picture. And I realized after some time that it's not about communicating the whole picture, it's about riding the rhythm of the moment. It's kind of like the young child had an idea on the world, and that idea has still remained, you know? And ideas must change as well. As the person's moment becomes more unknown, let's say every person's moment starts off with 50-50 of the world is known, 50% isn't, okay? There is matter and energy, and then there's dark matter and dark energy. It's literally too dark to see. So I find that a strange thing is occurring. And This is only from a philosophical perspective. I want to make a comment on science, that the same way science came and dismantled, in some sense, the religious kind of ideology that the earth is only the center, through the efforts of Galileo and Copernicus. We realize, through the efforts of Galileo mainly, we realize we are not the center of the earth. That means the universe doesn't start from where we are. It's not like a disk. And so when we realize that, so imagine the scientist now comes. Now, what is science is falling into the same trap as religion, in claiming that the unknown can be known, forever biased by one's vision. It's as if, like, kind of like entering a room, and before anybody speaks, you speaking first, and then what everybody else wanted to say, they don't. Do you see what I mean? Sometimes I feel like we live in the spirit of our ancestors, trying to carry the beacons that they have passed, only to find that the end is an end. And so when life can end, what does that mean about the beginning? It makes the beginning divine. Seldom it is said only those who have truly comprehended mortality can see the other side. And mortality is the strength of the continuing attention. That means if you can master the ability to trust and realize the unconditional ability of piloting your attention, then in that moment, you're no longer entrapped in the definitions of the world. You have become the definer. From there, the unknown speaks to a mind that cannot just, it's like, um, somebody once told me, it's like you have 2 ears and one mouth, so you listen twice as much, and I'm like, this guy wants me to stop talking. I feel honestly, there's nowhere else for humanity to go when it sees it's on this rock, and when it sees that all of human history, every meaningful thing is on a rock in the middle of nowhere. It's like what's gonna happen is, like, after we reach the limits of our external exploration, we explore our inner realms. Do you know? There are inner technologies. There are ways that the person think of as if your whole moment is an instrument and your attention plays it. So now you want to, with your attention, master the instrument of your existence in the moment. Even you can think of it as playfully as this, that, okay, I'm alive once, and I can totally wonder, about the design. That means life doesn't become interesting until you start following your own truths. The truth, there is no such thing as a static truth because the mind is dynamic. The most thing that a static truth can be is like it's an inspiration. The static truths are like footballs being thrown and catched from the other side. You know, the football really doesn't have anything, but it's the movement of the players, the movement of the systems of intelligence, and the conscious universal sector. And the thing is, there is a risk. Kind of, Friedrich Nietzsche gave a warning. He's like, he who stares into the abyss. No, he says when you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back into you, something like that. And what does that mean? He's saying that there are certain ranges that if the attention doesn't harmonize, if you do not keep your objective kind of life as a member of a civilization kind of active, it's like you got to keep your individual reality as a stable point, and then in various moments just observe the moment. We have masked the world in our own ideas, only to see that beyond language, experience continues in unfathomable ways. How do we acknowledge consciousness? We treat it as a realm. We say that the mind has an ability uh, behind the eyes of man to realign and reshape and redesign and rearticulate what is in front of man's eyes. So you see, we are an advanced technology in this universal sector. We're pretty much the most evolved thing, and if the most evolved thing has is struggling, then all the animals on this planet are like, oh man, we're screwed. Conscious evolution. We became aware of our objective bodies. We became aware of our subjective positions. Embodiments. And now we are left with the heartbeat course of true. You see somebody who's, here's the difference. Rather than it's like somebody who is the it's like in one angle you want to be something better, and in another angle you want to see how are you not better now. you know we are candles lit. We are candles lighting up the cosmos. We are temporary, and that means the quality of experience becomes purpose. Civilization must instantly be realized as a ship we're all on. Imagine this giant boat. And when we realize we're all on this giant ship, there comes its own kind of moral structure. That it doesn't matter if there is one hole in the ship, in some sense, humanity suffers. If there is an inability for a healthy human mind, or a human mind that has seen a world that is alive, to communicate, it's like do you guys see how we are 8 billion minds, but a lot of the fascinating things that are happening in life are not in front of our eyes. It's as if they are responses to sensory perception. I think we're, as a species, realizing that we have to study our inner realms and share the results, because how else will the evolution of language occur? It's like that's the inner renaissance I keep talking about. but it's on a collective level. So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I feel I've shared enough. I also feel I should share one more story before I end this off. Let's see. There's all right here. This is a good story. It's a story in India where there was this hat salesman who had this kind of flat wagon where he would put his hats on. Okay, a bunch of these kind of cylindrical looking hats they had back in the day. And so the hat salesman, he goes by a river, eats his lunch, and takes a nap by a tree. And so he wakes up and he looks at his what do you call it? He looks at it. He looks at his hat wagon and he sees all the hats are missing, not even a single one. The only hat that is there is his hat on his head. And in that moment, he looks around shocked, and then he suddenly hears movement above the tree, and he sees there's a bunch of monkeys on the tree who've taken the hats. Who've taken the hats, all the hats, and they're all wearing it. And the guy keeps shouting, like raising his hand like a fist, like, come down here, you monkeys, you know? And the monkeys just mimic the guy. They all move their hands the same way. The guy gets angry, like he moves left, the monkeys move left. The monkeys are copying him, taunting him. And so what happens is the guy gets fed up and it's like, what is this life? And he takes his hat and he throws his hat on the ground. And the moment he throws his hat on the ground, all the monkeys, like an army listening to orders, throw their hats on the ground. All the hats on the ground. Right? The guy quickly grabs the hats, and goes home and tells the story and never goes to that same river. And he tells this story to his son, and his son, in some sense goes and, how can I tell you, becomes, does the same line of work, and then his grandson does the same line of work. And one day the grandson, he doesn't know, but coincidentally he's found himself by that side of the river and he's eating a meal. And so as he's there, the grandson finds himself in a similar situation. The grandson falls asleep. And now, guys, listen, this is the main part of the story right here. The grandson falls asleep, wakes up, suddenly notices the hats are gone, and he suddenly remembers his grandfather's story. His grandfather had told him the story, and he's like, oh my God. And he looks up, and it's like as if a prophecy being fulfilled, And he looks up and he sees all the monkeys have the hats on them. And in some sense, the guy suddenly raises his hand, and the grandson raises his hand, and he sees all the monkeys raise their hand. And he's like, it works. And then he slowly takes his hand on his own hat and slowly raises his hat and takes it, and all the monkeys raise their hat. Then he suddenly throws his hat on the ground with full force. And he looks up and he sees one of the monkeys comes down, picks up that guy's hat, and then slaps him in the face, and he says, you think you're the only one who has a grandfather? That's the story, guys. And it's kind of like nature adjusts. You can never really. Um, it's kind of like nature is here first and humanity is its guest. And so, as a guest, of course, we can't be responsible for the whole cosmos, yet we can responsibly behave in our own universal sector. Because eventually there will be organizations where galactic archetypes, you see, that the issue with normality is that any idea that sticks around too long is either going to want to stay immortal or it's going to hate that it's there. Through the clarity of present vision, the pilot navigates as the whole moment of being, as the whole plane of existence. So, anyways, guys, I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.